So your uterus, so to speak, or endometrial lining doesn't have a mind of its own. It just follows what the ovaries dictate. So there is what you consider as the menstrual cycle, and there is the ovarian cycle. So your menstrual cycle is going to mimic what the ovarian cycle is doing. It turns out that as we grow older, we start to malfunction. And it's a very, very gradual change from premenopause to menopause. In some women, it can take as long as, the transition can take as long as 10 years, 15 years. In other women, it's rather quick. It can happen in 5 years. Now, there will be a very small fraction of women, they get very lucky, they have regular period until the day they shut down. That's rather a small percentage of women. I would say, I don't want to put a number on it. I don't think there's very good literature on it. Maybe 20% of the women will do that. 8 out of 10 women will start to show early signs. What are some of the things happen? Well, they miss a period here and there. Their periods start to come more frequently. They used to come every 28 days, now they come every 24 days. Or they bleed excessively, they miss 2 periods and then they have very heavy bleeding. In some women, they will have 2 periods a month, 3 periods a month. In others, there's no pattern. They can't predict. There's no predictability is out the window. They don't know when the period is going to come, when it's not going to come. So every person is different because it's not just the ovarian cycle or ovarian function, but there are other factors that complicate the situation. It's not simple story for each person. It's not going to be the same things happening to you. For example, another common cause that contributes to abnormal bleeding in premenopause is fibroids. That's a common terminology that women use. The actual name for it is leiomyoma. So it's a tumor of the muscle fibers that grows in the wall of the uterus. When you have fibroids, they are always going to make the bleeding wacky. You're going to lose that pattern. And very frequently, they cause very, very heavy bleeding. Now, what is this thing called fibroids that you hear all the time? It's more like a genetic disposition. There are little seedlings in the walls of the uterus that slowly grow into small tumors. They are benign, they are not cancer. They are almost never associated with any kind of cancer. But they can be very annoying. They can grow very big. They can cause you bleed a lot. They can also cause a lot of pain. In some women, they can grow so big, it can virtually actually increase the girth of your belly and it looks like you're pregnant. They can grow really large to the point that they can start to cause pain sometimes, pain and pressure. And remember, since the bladder is right next to the uterus, it will impinge on the bladder. So you start to have urinary tract problems, you start to have more urinary tract infections, you have more frequency, you want to pee all the time. So it's not just the ovarian cycle, but many other conditions that can complicate the bleeding problem. I'm trying to restrict the discussion just to the most common conditions. I'm not going to try to go into, there are hundreds of different conditions, so we're going to try to stick to the most common causes. Now, it turns out that the bleeding issue is very much related to ethnicity. Just like other genetic predispositions, women from different ethnic groups have different risk factors. So as a general rule, I can tell you, very easy to remember, if you randomly pick two black women, African American women from the street, just randomly go grab two of them, say, ma'am, can I talk to you for a second? Just have them together. One out of them will have fibroids when they are after the age of 40. One out of two black women will have fibroids. One out of three Hispanic women will have fibroids. One out of every white woman will have fibroids. So that's like a generally true. That's the kind of statistics that we know. So this is one of the most common conditions that women suffer from that impact their lifestyle. The other most common condition which is even more common is that women who have done childbearing through the vaginal route, through the birth canal and not C-sections, they tend to start to have leak problems. They frequently have accidents. Now there's two kinds of accidents. For understanding purposes, in a broad sense, you can take all kinds of bladder leak problems and divide them into two categories. One of them is called urge incontinence, urge problem, which is a medical problem, believe it or not. The other type of problem is called stress urinary incontinence, which is not a medical problem. It cannot be treated medically. This is it's fixed surgically. That's the only way to fix it. So I'm going to try to give you guys some understanding. One of the problem is in the healthcare system, people go for surgery, they get treatments, they do it in good faith because the doctor told me so, I trust him. He's my doctor, he's a good doctor. Meanwhile, they don't know why they're taking particular medication, what the condition is. Well, I'm going for surgery next week. Why am I going to? My doctor explained to me, kind of, sort of. I didn't understand, but I trust him. So I think participation in your health is very important. If you understand why you are doing something, it empowers you. You kind of develop a self-confidence. You know why you are doing, subjecting your body to incisions. So I think hopefully one of the things these seminars will do is to kind of educate you guys. I will try to make things as simple as possible. And you will be surprised at the end of the seminar you should know more, understand this more than some physicians. So to explain to you what is urge incontinence, women usually use the word overactive bladder. Is that a familiar term? That's called overactive bladder. What is overactive bladder? Overactive bladder is actually a condition where the nerves in your bladder do not talk with your brain. Remember, every motor or sensory function in your body is controlled by the brain. If I move my arm, if I scratch my face, no matter what I do, it's always the brain sending instructions down the spine, into my extremities, into my organ systems, to my heart, lungs, liver, kidneys, gallbladders, pancreas, my bladder, into reproductive organs. It's the brain sending messages and tell that organ or that particular part of the organ what to do. So in this case, there is a miscommunication or lack of communication between the nerves in the wall of the bladder and the brain. Now that can happen due to some medical conditions. Diabetes can do it. What does diabetes do? Diabetes will destroy the nerves and the blood vessels in your body. There are other conditions that can do that. It can also be somewhat, to some extent, part of aging. It's very common that as we age, our sensory system and motor system does not have the same coordination. It doesn't talk well with the brain. you can see a 16-year-old and a 60-year-old, how they respond very quickly to a situation that will be dramatically different. So this is called urge incontinence. Why is it called urge incontinence when the nerves in the bladder don't talk well with the brain? Because you have urge all the time to go to bathroom. Simple as that. And when you have the urge, the urge is like, I gotta go. First of all, right now you are totally comfortable. All of a sudden, you gotta run. You can't wait. It is also associated with frequency, like you go to bathroom a lot more than you used to. There is no standard that will tell you how many times going to the bathroom a day is normal and how many times is not normal. There's no way I could tell you that, because there are other factors such as how much water you drink, how much caffeine you drink. If you work in the office and you gulp coffee every 2 hours, you're going to be peeing all the time. It doesn't mean you have urge incontinence. So one doesn't need to be confused with the other. Therefore, history taking from the patient is very important to see all the details, so decide, is it a genuine problem, or is it, because this person drink a large soda from McDonald's for lunch, breakfast, and dinner, that's caffeine. You want to pee every hour, every half an hour. So symptoms and signs and a condition can be due to many, many different reasons that can cause it. So one has to be careful for doing a diagnosis. But let's say someone has urge incontinence either due to aging or some other reasons. Generally speaking, if you're not a caffeine drinker, peeing more than 8 times a day is kind of too much. Going to bathroom 10 times a day, that is a sign that there may be a problem. What are the other common things in this condition? You wake up at night a lot. You wake up 3 times, 4 times, 5 times during the night to go to bathroom. What else is common? It's very common that when you do have the urge to go to bathroom, you gotta go, you run, and before you have a chance to take your clothes off, you pee on yourself. You have accident. So these are some of the common signs and symptoms that tell you that you have urge incontinence, which is a medical problem. What happens is the bladder keeps on filling, and it doesn't tell your brain that it's time to go and pee. But all of a sudden, it's finally the nerves catch up and they feel that it's time to go. Then the walls of the bladder become very irritated and they go into spasm, and then you run to the bathroom. This is what happens. And the treatment for that is very simple. There are medications that work very well. In some patients, especially elderly patients, when the problem is gotten really, really bad, sometimes medications don't work that well. So there are some new therapies nowadays that are somewhat surgical. Just like you get a pacemaker for your heart, there is a sort of a pacemaker that they embed under your skin at the lower spine level, which a wire runs into the nerve that supplies branches of smaller nerves to the bladder. It constantly stimulates, and that pacemaker can stay there up to 5 years, and it stimulate the bladder wall and improve the nerve endings. In other words, it helps the nerves to grow, and it's pretty successful. It is kind of not available in all centers, but this is a procedure that